Hello, today we're going to unpack one of the most common challenges that everyone faces, which is trying to willpower and discipline and oftentimes shame themselves into producing change. But there's a very simple solution that so many people, myself included, just don't consider that is so deeply rooted in neuroscience that I'm excited to share with you today. So most people, especially in this modern world, really struggle with focus and focus leaching into discipline, and they're just too overstimulated to actually make a sustainable change in their life. Well, the reality is that might be a factor, but bigger at play is just the habit loop that goes on inside of your brain. So that's what we're going to be discussing today and really unpacking. Is it really discipline and willpower, or is there just one part of the habit wheel that we're missing? So inside of Nature, which is an amazing publishing house, they shared an article about the habit formation that goes on inside of the brain. And in this article, they outline that there are three phases: trigger, behavior, and the last one that we all forget, which is reward, which is the most important. But before we get there, we have to walk, and then we can run, and then we can sprint. So number one, let's talk about the trigger. When it comes to making change in our life and establishing new habits, the trigger is really important because our brain needs to know what environment is going to allocate resources for what to do, which is another video that we just recently posted. This is why transitional behaviors are so important for establishing work-life balance through boundaries, so that your brain in this specific environment knows what to do and how to participate. This type of stuff is not gentle and it's not easy, because so many of us have grown up inside of chaos, that chaos feels like home. And when we get into something that's stable, it feels like chaos. And that in and of itself is absolutely destructive to our ability to settle, calm, rewire, and regulate ourselves into a new environment. So trigger, that can be an external environment. It can also be an internal environment where we're using specific senses to tell our nervous system, hey, we're gonna have this moment. So at the end of the day, for me, I put a little cherry blossom into the oil diffuser, and that smell is a trigger for my nervous system to say, oh, parasympathetic time, right? And that is really, really important. Number two, it's the behavior itself, right? And the behavior itself is kind of like setting a goal. And if you're struggling with this, there's another video that's going to be coming out really shortly called Clarity Through Contrast, which is a very simple tool that I use with all of my clients to help them better establish where they want to go by looking at where they don't want to go, which again, might sound really simple and straightforward, but in practice is extremely powerful for making sustainable changes in your life. The biggest thing that it comes to with behavior is that it is a skill to challenge ratio. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you want to be challenged, but you don't want to overexert yourself to such a degree that you're burning yourself out. And this is what ends up happening with so many people, whether they're starting a new business or they're starting a new relationship or all these other things. They have all of the best intentions to lean in and do it. And what ends up happening is they don't have the skill required to maintain the consistency at the original pace. And this is things that we're unfortunately recognizing in relationships, like love bombing, and then we start to look at patterns and why they fall off and then they attach. And this is the same thing for entrepreneurs, where they start off with all this ambition and then the novelty settles down and then the consistency falls away as well. So what I would really recommend is just starting off with 1% change and then building that through consistent daily scheduling. Behavior is so important when it comes to having consistency, and consistency is so important when it comes to behavior. And again, this ties into trigger. Now, this is the part that I want to talk about the most. Most people think that discipline is doing the hard thing when the easy thing is available, and there is so much truth inside of that. However, if that is your platform for making change over time, you are going to constantly be chasing willpower, when realistically, what I would like you to chase instead is celebration. Celebration, I recently heard this quote and it really rocked me. Celebration is gratitude in action. And we know all of the benefits that happen when we start to celebrate ourselves and be grateful for what we have. Even during turbulent times, you can celebrate the fact that you're having big feelings. You can celebrate the fact that you're making progress despite. You can celebrate the fact that things are going on. But when it comes to habit formation, the really important part of this is that we are celebrating the fact that the juice is worth the squeeze. Now, what does this mean? Your brain, when it's opportunistic and it's looking at the new thing that's in front of it, is going to say, okay, we have the status quo over here. This thing's basic, it works, it doesn't break. And now you're trying to introduce this new thing? Are you crazy? And it's gonna say, okay, I see that new thing, but is the juice worth the squeeze? Is that something that you actually want to participate inside of? And most people go trigger, behavior, trigger, and they just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, never slowing down at the end of that and actually going, oh my gosh, good for me, right? Internal celebration. Because what internal celebration starts to do is it establishes that you put time, energy, and intention into a task. And when you do that and then you remember and celebrate that thing, it starts to add these tags inside of that behavior. And what starts to happen is that your brain goes, oh, that thing was actually important to you, wasn't it? Okay, all right, I can see how that thing is very real. I understand that. And like, oh my gosh, now this person's doing it consistently. The time, attention, energy that you are pouring into those tasks makes such an insane difference. It allows you to expand and create, and it really does something beautiful. And this is kind of the back half of this video. You start to understand value-based motivation. And value-based motivation is the infinite well of your availability to do something, not only because it's available, but because you want to. Now, there's external motivation as well, which is I'm doing this thing so that I can get that thing. For me, I'm like a puppy. I'm really well food motivated. So I have little chocolate pieces that when I'm doing a brand new thing or I'm moving into like feeling my feelings in a really monstrous way, yeah, there's for sure gonna be like bits and pieces of chocolate laying around so I can celebrate myself using that. But that in and of itself will eventually fall short as well because our system adapts. And then we're going to need even more chocolate and even more chocolate. And then eventually it might not just work at all, which for everyone is completely different depending on your profile, your sensory sensitivities, your capacity to manage change. The biggest thing that I want to invoke and let you know is that when you start to live in this value-based motivation cycle, you can start to recognize when the motivation goes away, it's time to level up or it's time to get more clear on what we are trying to do and accomplish. Maybe this means stretching a little bit more and making the behavior a little bit harder. Perhaps it's understanding that the outcome that we're hoping to achieve inside of this, and the most common one that I see all the time, is journaling. People tell me all the time, I just can't stay consistent with journaling. Well, as you do the thing is going to change you. So as you journal and as you process, there's going to be a huge invitation to make sustainable change in your life. And that is why at the end of these things, I always recommend gratitude and saying, oh my gosh, I am so proud of myself for doing this task and leaning into this thing. And I'm so excited that we had the opportunity to do that. Because when you get the opportunity to lean in and do those things, some really remarkable things start to happen. Number one, your brain will start to prioritize that thing because it is truly now the path of least resistance. We recognize through time and repetition that, okay, you prioritize and you value this thing. I'm going to allow you an easier pathway to do that. And the way that the brain does that is it begins to wrap myelination around neural axes. And what that looks like is a fatty tissue layer that we deposit on neural pathways that we use repetitively over and over again so that the pathway gets faster and automatic. And that is the process, again, of adaptation. Because eventually the thing that's working really well right now is not going to work for forever. There is no forever system, there is no forever progress. So what we need to do is take in the data, collect what's working, and then reestablish what's not. So to circle all this back and help us collect this thing, it's not about discipline. It's not about willpower. What it's about is your ability to celebrate and incentivize your brain by using value-based motivation, by celebrating in the moment the effort and intention that you placed into this. Now, if you're somebody that has been chasing motivation and dopamine and all of those other things, that's because dopamine is a very easy anticipation reward mechanism, which I already have a dopamine video out there. Please go take a look at it. But if you need more accountability in your life and more support, please check out some of the links down below. I would love to discuss how we can work together into the future. And if you're new to the channel, heck, hang around here and subscribe. I'd love to talk with you more. Have a great day, y'all.